Hi everyone. I am in the desert of California visiting our friends Scott and Vicky. We had a big delay between leaving Alaska and publishing the last video. So this next video is going to bring you up to date. Before the new batteries, fishing was done only for the table.
Oh, it's not that big.
Christy seemed to have the best luck at rock fishing. On one occasion, the net was put out for salmon, but it was too late in the season, and all the pinks had morphed into humpies, whose flesh would be mushy and not very good tasting. All the fish caught this day were released, and the net was quickly taken in. With the ability to now run a standalone freezer, the halibut line was put out in deep water. After leaving the line to soak for a couple of hours, it is always exciting to see what comes up. On this day, John and Christy found a lot of sculpin, which were unhooked and thrown back. Then the first halibut. The hooks are on leaders, which can be easily unclipped from the line, removed from the fish, and rebaited with salmon bellies, clipped back onto the line and dropped. In addition to the sculpin bycatch, there was a spiny dogfish shark. Pulling the line can be a lot of hard work, and John got a workout, especially on this day with a southeasterly swell running. With a catch of 2 halibut, the anchor was reset and left to soak again, while John and Christy headed in to clean and fillet the halibut. On an outing with Jean and Barb, John and Christy tried fishing from the shore for silver salmon, which is also known as coho salmon. Their luck wasn't very good, and Jean urged them to put out the net and try round hauling the salmon instead. This netted great results, and with this catch, we would have enough salmon for the freezer and for my favorite, smoked salmon. For the smoked salmon, Lee washed the fish, removing any stray scales. John cut the thicker portions of the fillets so salt and smoke could penetrate well under the scrutiny of an interested observer. The salted fillets were left to stand 1 hour before being quickly rinsed and hung in the Arctic entry with a fan blowing to allow the fillets to drip and dry. Christy hung newspaper in the windows to prevent the sun from warming up the fish. Meanwhile, Lee and I collected and cut dead alder branches from the forest. After a day of hanging, the fish were moved to the repurposed refrigerator and smoked for an additional 10 days. I can attest to their excellent flavor. As the days became noticeably shorter and cooler, the tropical feel inside the hoop house was thoroughly enjoyable. In the hoop house, the bumper crop of apples, a result of the summer's abundant sunshine and warm weather, ripened, and Christy had apples to sell. Her apples were a hit at the Kodiak Farmers Market and quickly disappeared. We indulged in apple pies and crisps and enjoyed tasting the huge variety of apples she raises. Bare spots in the garden beds appeared as warm weather vegetables were harvested, and indoor days became more frequent. It was time for us to start looking for a way to get to town for our flight. Luckily, the weather moderated enough for us to go by boat the day before our flight, though John and Christy had a rough ride back to Sailboat Cove after dropping us off. Their friends, Mike and Kathy, kindly put us up, and the day before our flight, we made use of the truck John and Christy keep in town. A big storm was forecast for the day of our flight, and the afternoon before, the clouds looked ominous. It was no surprise then when our flight was canceled. The day after the storm dawned glorious with a dusting of snow on the peaks of Kodiak. After the cancellation of our flight and a subsequent later flight, we were not scheduled to fly out until 2 days after the storm. The reason for the delay was mainly due to Blondie and the fact that we wanted good connections to minimize the time she would be in transit. Blondie hates any transportation faster than her beloved La Brisa. We had a lovely day exploring the far reaches of Kodiak's road system, and Blondie especially enjoyed the beach. On a geologic note, the eroded bank of earth we saw at the southern beach reveals some of Kodiak's geological history. The thing I find most amazing is that the uppermost pale layer is the result of a blanketing of ash from the 1912 volcanic eruption of Nova Rupta near Mount Katmai on the Alaskan Peninsula, over 100 miles away. All of Kodiak was blanketed with this ash. John and Christy have a similar layer at Sailboat Cove. As we boarded our flight, we looked back on the wonderful times, laughs, and meals we enjoyed at Sailboat Cove and this beautiful land of Alaska with its lovely people. We were sad to go, but at the same time, we looked forward to eventually getting to La Brisa. Jet travel can be amazing. From a clear and windless departure on Kodiak to an instrument landing in Anchorage, we were treated to this awesome spectacle upon departure from Anchorage. With simply a flight, one can go from one extreme on Earth to another. From verdant mountain slopes to dry and fire-scarred hillsides. Upon our return, we enjoyed family gatherings and made plans with friends and family for their future visits to La Brisa. There were the usual packages awaiting us, and one very special package, La Brisa's new mainsail. I found the packaging of the battens interesting, and we elected to leave the battens as packaged for the trip to Mexico. I was pleased to see the new sail bag had a strip of Pfeiffer text for breathability. That was a nice touch. Now the sail, Lee, and Blondie are in Guaymas at the boatyard. Lee left a week ago and is getting La Brisa ready for splashing. And as for me, I'm a cautionary tale for young sailors. I'm paying for my youthful indiscretions of acquiring sunburns with a serious visit to my dermatologist. I have had a bunch of precancer spots burned off, and what I thought was a mole was biopsied and determined to be basal cell cancer. It's a common form of skin cancer. I've had it before, but what it means is I'm going to have to interrupt our plans for cruising this winter and fly back for the surgery probably in January. Also, one other thing for those of you that are considering a long trip, be sure and check the expiration dates on your ATM and credit cards. Lee discovered when he crossed the border that his ATM card had expired, so he sits cashless in Guaymas now while I wait for the card. In addition, I checked my card and saw that it was expiring in December. So as soon as I get those cards, I am on my way to La Brisa. So until then,